Hey, it's Jason. Do we have audio?
I can hear you, Jason. It's Katie Pritchard, but I'm virtual as well.
Okay.
I can hear you also on virtual. This is Dennis Price.
Mute.
We always like to have a short delay for our startup of our meetings, just to build up a little anticipation in the audience, and it makes for more engaged public reaction to what we do here.
I checked with Jason earlier and he could hear me.
One way to
We'll
view
go
it.
with it like that. I don't know. Jason, can you hear me? Either Jason.
I can hear you. I can hear you guys.
I can hear you guys
Okay.
now.
Yeah, I don't know why your screens aren't working.
I didn't check. I can call Jim.
So we can't, I don't know why your screens are not working right now. You pushed all the buttons, but nothing is.
So did you interview again? Huh? You interview again? I'm not up yet. Oh, you're not, it's Jason. That's right. You're stuck with me for a little while longer. Yeah, that's fine.
I think we can tolerate
4
that.
years? Okay, yeah.
Hi, Jim, this is Clancy Boynton. The commissioner's screens are not coming on. Do you know why?
Do you need those to continue the meeting? I don't have any presentation.
We have our,
Video presentation.
we have our packets.
We have the packet.
Issue of not
Everything
saying
else
who's
is working, but
So,
they've
yeah,
got no,
is it just
no
Jason
screens
online?
coming
Jason and
on the
Katie.
dial.
Oh,
And then you've got two
Oh.
staff people, county manager, and, one of our applicants for the planning commission.
Oh, he says only a full reboot would fix it. Can they live with it?
Can you operate without having your screens up in front of you?
we'll make do.
I think it's
Never mind, we're
fine.
not
We've got
gonna
our packets.
do. Yeah, that would take 20 minutes to reboot the whole system and get it back up.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Well, let's continue on with the meeting, which began at 10, but was slightly delayed in getting under action. We'll begin with a roll call, please.
Chair Farrar,
Present?
Vice Chair Powers,
Present.
Commissioner Magyar is excused, Commissioner Pritchard,
Present.
Commissioner Johnson,
I'm here.
and Commissioner Kraschauer.
Present.
Thank you.
We've all had a chance to look at the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda? Can we adopt it by?
Adopt the agenda as presented. Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Think we have
Aye.
unanimity on that. This is the time, well, I see we don't have the flag salute in
Yeah,
here.
I was gonna mention that.
Are we, let's go ahead and do the flag salute. If we're gonna leave it out, maybe we should discuss doing so instead of just doing it by agenda.
It was
Unless-
inadvertently omitted from the agenda. No offense was intended.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this is a time for business from the public. We allow a few minutes at the beginning of each monthly meeting for anyone to give a brief presentation about any matter to do with land use in the county or some other concern that's not part of the public hearings today. Has there been any Buddy signing in for that?
No, I've heard from no one.
Okay. Seeing nobody virtually or here present wishing to make comments, we'll close the business from the public. And this morning we have 3 public hearings on different ordinances. And the first one is Ordinance 2308, Warrenton Urban Growth Boundary Amendment. This is a legislative hearing on an ordinance to change the urban growth boundary in Warrenton and to annex the land to the city. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest to report? And those of you that are commissioners that are attending virtually, you're going to really need to speak up and chime in if you have something to say, because it's difficult for me to see in back of me whether you're raising a hand or doing any other kind of signal. So I hear no conflict of interest. Does anyone in the audience object to the jurisdiction of this commission to hear this matter at this time? Seeing none, I'll ask for a staff report.
Okay. Good morning, Planning Commission members. My name is Gail Henriksen. I'm the Community Development Director. And the item that's before you is to amend the urban growth boundary for the city of Warrenton. And the reason this is being requested is to correct an error that occurred in a previous mapping exercise when the city of Warrenton updated its comprehensive plan in 2005 and adopted a new map. Along with that, the city is also requesting, subsequent to the UGB amendment, they will be annexing in one of the parcels, or are looking to annex in one of the parcels. So the property that's the subject of this case actually consists of 2 parcels. One is the north parcel, which is approximately Can everybody hear me virtually?
You cut
We were
out
getting a
there
bunch.
for a sec.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. Okay, so just to recap very quickly, so the request is to amend the urban growth boundary for the city of Warrenton to correct a mapping error that basically occurred in 2005. The properties, there are 2 of them, the north parcel, which is approximately 14 acres and is owned by the city of Warrenton, and then the west parcel, which is approximately 43 acres and is owned by the U.S. government. The 2 parcels, or the portions of these parcels that we're looking at today, were originally included in the 1979 comprehensive plan map for the town of Hammond and were part of their urban growth boundary. In 1991, when the cities and the town, City of Warrenton and the town of Hammond merged their operations, they created a committee of representatives from both governments to help draft new land use regulations and a new comprehensive plan. And during that process, at some point, these 2 parcels were inadvertently left out of this new City of Warrenton comprehensive plan map. And so to address this, we contacted Department of Land Conservation and Development staff and talked to them. They recommended going through this formal urban growth boundary amendment process, which is why we're here today. So back in April of this year, the Warrenton Planning Commission conducted their public hearing, and the findings are included in your staff report starting on page 9 of your packet. You can see that their findings are incorporated in there. You'll also see that staff, Clatsop County staff, has recommended that you recommend the Board of Commissioners approve this amendment as well. And the way that the process will work is that this initially goes through the City of Warrenton and their Planning Commission. They then transfer the request onto the county because we also have to be a party to it and approve it. And so it will come first to the Planning Commission, just as any ordinance would. You will make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, and because this is going to be adopted by ordinance, our board will hold 2 public hearings on this. Once our process is complete, we will send it back to Warrenton, and then their Warrenton City Commission will vote on it and make the final vote on it. So that's what is happening with this request. Jay Blake, who is the planning director for the city of Warrenton, is also here today, and both he and I are here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you for that report, Director Henriksen. Are there any questions from the commissioners, planning commissioners? Staff? I hear none. I had one question, just to clarify. Are we approving the urban growth boundary change and the annexation, or are we not involved in the annexation process?
We would not be involved in the annexation process. So,
Okay. All right.
Was there a proposed motion in here?
yeah, there is. It's on page 10, I believe.
Go ahead.
Yep. At
Well,
the very
this
bottom.
is just a point where we're asking questions. If there are no further questions about the actual staff report or clarifications, I was going to open the public testimony. So I'll call for public testimony. The hearing is open to the public to comment on this proposed ordinance change. A failure to raise an issue that with sufficient specificity to afford a decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal to the board or to LUBA if it runs to that. All speakers from the floor are asked to sign in and state their name and address before speaking. If appearing in a representative capacity, please state who you represent and limit your remarks to a reasonable period of time, which looks like we could afford anyone quite a bit of time this morning. Are there any public agency comments? Seeing none, I'll ask if there are any comments from the public or residents of the county. And I see or hear none. So at that point, there's nothing to respond to, and I'll therefore close the public testimony and open it up to discussion of the Planning Commission. Did you have?
It seems like a housekeeping issue that we need to get cleared up. Happy to help the city.
Anybody from virtual world there that want to chime in?
I just feel that this is Katie. I just feel the same. It seems like a housekeeping issue unless I'm mistaken and someone can point that out. But, yeah, and just get this cleaned up as it should have been so that they can move forward.
I agree.
Very good. Sounds like we have some consensus around this. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Yes, I'll move that the Board of Commissioners adopt ordinance 2308, amending the Clatsop County Comprehensive Plan to correct the City of Warrenton urban growth boundary.
Okay, it's been moved to recommend to the Board of Commissioners to adopt the ordinance 2308 as presented this morning. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Linder. So it's been moved and seconded to recommend to the County Board of Commissioners to adopt the ordinance 2308 as presented in our packet. All those, I guess with some people on virtual, we should do a roll call vote on this.
Vice Chair Powers,
Yes.
Commissioner Pritchard,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Linder,
Yes.
Commissioner Kraftauer,
Yes.
and Chair Francis.
Aye. So it looks like, what is that, a 6-0 vote? All in favor? So the motion passes, and our recommendation is that the Board of Commissioners adopt 2308, ordinance 2308. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Gail, for your help.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We're on to the third item on the agenda, which is another public hearing, and this is in consideration of ordinance 2306 regarding the comprehensive plan update. This is another legislative hearing, so I'll just quickly go through the procedure on that. We're considering approving or recommending to the Board of Commissioners to approve the draft comprehensive plan update as presented in our packet this morning. This is a legislative hearing, and I'll ask if any commissioners have a conflict of interest to report. And I see none or hear none. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the commission to hear this matter at this time? And again, I see none and hear none, so I'll ask for the staff report at this point.
Thank you. Again, Gail Henriksen, Community Development Director. So it was almost a year ago when you, as a planning commission, looked at this document and made a recommendation on the various goals to the Board of Commissioners, and it was back in August 9th of last year. So I guarantee you that really this will not become an annual event. We're hoping that once we get through this process, then we can go 5-7 years and then do our updates on a regular basis. But we are back here today with a somewhat revised document from what you saw in August of last year. I know that when we last looked at it, I think some of you had just been recently appointed. It was the first time you were probably seeing the document, and we were working on a very tight time frame that we had agreed with the board that we were going to try and maintain. And so we did meet those deadlines, and we took it to the board back in September. They wanted some additional time to look through it because it was obviously a very large document that we were handing to them at that point in September of last year. So we pulled it from the agenda, gave the board time to go through it, identify their concerns and questions that they had. We also worked, we being planning staff, worked with our county manager to actually go through the statewide planning goals, the implementing Oregon administrative rules to determine what is actually mandatory for the county to perform and where we have discretion. And so you'll see in this revised documents that in some cases shoulds have been changed to shalls because those items are mandatory, and conversely shalls have been changed to should or mays because we have some discretion and we're not required to do certain items. And we did give you links to all the strike-through underlined formats that you could link to. Obviously, we didn't include them in the packet because it would be a very, very large document, but that would give you an idea of items that were changed. Among the other changes that we made is we pulled the large part of the narrative, the past, current, and future conditions, and put those items into a background report. And those links to those background reports were also provided in your agenda package for today. And what we end up with then is a much more streamlined document than what you saw in August. So we have just a brief overview to identify what the purpose of the goal is and what we're looking at, and then we move straight into the policies, which are really the meat of any jurisdiction's comprehensive plan. And what we're looking at with the policies is we want to, they become the foundation for any future revisions to the county's zoning code and our implementing ordinances. So updating the comprehensive plan, which hasn't fully been done in over 40 years, is the foundation layer, and from there, over the next few years, we'll also be working with our zoning code to update that, to make sure that our implementing measures are consistent with the policies that are in our comprehensive plan, and then to make sure the two documents are consistent internally and also with other jurisdictions' plans, because that's also required by state statute. Among the other changes we also made, you'll see that Goal 5 has been removed from the current packet that you have here today. And the reason for that is Goal 5, our citizen advisory committees spent 6 months working on. They probably could have spent 6 years working on it because it's very complex. It contains, I think, 13 different inventories ranging from historic resources, fish and wildlife habitat, quarry and mining, cultural resources. And so there's a lot that's covered in Goal 5, and it's very complex, it's very technical, and so we've pulled that one aside, and it will be scheduled for a separate review process as we move forward with this. You'll also see that the 6 community plans that were also part of your package in August last year have also been taken out at this point. And again, those 6 community plans would be placed on their own separate adoption schedule. We need to go back as staff and look through those again. We may need to send them through another legal review as well. But just those were the big changes that happened since August of last year. And so we're here today for you to look through the current digested, I guess, version of the comprehensive plan. Go through those goals and policies. I'm sure that you've probably had a chance to at least go through some of them with your packet that was sent out last week. And then to make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners about whether or not to move forward with adopting this as presented. And so I'm here today to answer any questions. There's a lot of material in your package, so I'm sure there will be a lot of discussion. And again, I'm really just here to answer your questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that very concise report, Director Henriksen. Are there any questions of staff at this point from the Planning Commission?
One question. We were to recommend approval of this as presented by staff. Obviously, the county commissioners still have leeway to make any changes that they see fit. But does that create any challenges for them to be able to change anything once it gets past us and onto them, or?
No, they will conduct 2 public hearings, and so they can still make changes to the document. If they decide that changes are warranted, depending on whether it's a substantive change, we may have to go back out and re-advertise and possibly hold a first public hearing, for example. But there's nothing that would, in your recommendation today, that would limit them from making any changes. It would just be a process we would go through.
Okay.
And one thing I didn't point out in my report is that we did take this very draft to the board on March 15th to a work session to get some initial feedback from the board. And at that point, the consensus of the board was to move forward with it.
Okay.
Any other questions from the commissioners for our Community Development Director? Hearing none, I'll open the public testimony portion of the hearing. This hearing is open for public testimony at this time. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford decision maker and parties opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the board. All speakers from the floor are asked to sign in, state their name and their address, and if you are appearing as a representative of any one agency, please make it clear and identify who you represent. Limit your remarks to a reasonable length of time of, say, 3 minutes. And I'll ask if there are any any representatives of public agencies present that wish to make comment. And I see none and hear none, so I'll ask if there are any comments from the public, from any of the citizens of our county to make comments at this time. And nobody requested sign-in, and we're not seeing anybody here raising any hands to make a comment. So I will say that we have no comments for the staff to respond to, and no final questions from any witnesses. So at that point, I will close the public testimony at 10:26, according to our clock. And I'll ask for discussion from the planning commissioners on any aspect of the revised comp plan as presented in our packet. Does anybody wish to come out with an opening salvo? Pretty quiet today. Any of the two commissioners in virtual have comments you'd like to make or points you'd like to bring up for discussion?
I
This
don't
is-
have anything.
And this is Katie. I don't either.
We've talked about this a long time and went through it a lot. I think that it's about ready to get passed on.
And I just want to commend our staff. Honestly, a lot of the stuff that there's just, you know, the information is well put together for us that I just don't, you know, I really appreciate the work that's been done on this and also the way it's presented to us. So, yeah, I don't have any further questions at this time.
All right. Well, I have a couple of questions or I have a couple of comments about it. And I'll just say overall, I really like this revised format of removing the extensive introductory material and putting it in a separate report is probably a very good idea because it lets anybody using the plan get right to the heart of it, the meat of it, which is really the policies. And I found the introductions of each goal very succinct and should enable most people to understand what the goal is all about from the state's perspective and from how the county interprets that for our locality. And I also find that the policies were more clearly spelled out and some of the kind of conflictory language that came out of, you know, inexperienced public people that helped put these policies onto paper have been clarified and cleaned up. So I think overall it's a very good plan. It's much improved. And I've been here from the start of it. I'm not sure any of the other commissioners have. So I kind of have that 3-year view or whatever it is now that we're into this. And so it was quite a process. And I think it's important to recognize all the work that went into this from many individuals around the county that really did their best to make a really worthwhile comp plan, one that would last for hopefully 10 years or so, which really will guide the county. I do feel that the length of the process kind of wore the public down, and I think that's apparent here in seeing nobody present at this momentous occasion when we're about ready to make a recommendation to the board on this plan that could last for years. Getting more specific, I'll say that I didn't expect to read the plan and actually agree with all the policies as written in the plan, nor did I think I would disagree with all of them. And that proves to be the case, and that's probably true of many of the other commissioners, even though they haven't stated so. There are a couple of things I'd highlight, though, that I do feel strongly about. And the first one's in Goal 1 on page 72 of our packet. And the policy objective 2, policy E, is, I don't have it open to that place, but it talks about considering changing the planning zones or the planning areas of the county, which now number, I believe, 6. to be consistent with or coterminous with the Board of Commissioner districts, which are 5 in number. And I'm very strongly opposed to that idea. I think it'll just politicize land use decision-making in the county. And I also think that land use planning is more logically done based on land units, not on political boundaries. It's the geography here that we're all living on and in that determine the future of our county and what we can do here and how we can do it best. And I think looking at the county from a geographical perspective and land type is much more logical for land use planning and not the political subdivisions. I'll also point out that I believe it's District 4, Commission District 4, since the revising of the boundaries of the commission districts about a year ago, based on the 2020 decadal census data, restricts that district to just a small amount of county unincorporated land outside of the urban boundary of the city of Astoria. So that district has very little in it that the county actually has jurisdiction over. So if you were to divide the county up into 5 zones to be more related to the districts, it would be more reasonable to do it in amounts that are roughly proportional, 1/5 of the county. So I see all kinds of reasons why I dislike that policy, and I would like to propose that we recommend taking it out of the draft plan. But before I open that up to an actual motion, since as chair I can't make a motion, I will go on and just point out a couple other things that are worth mentioning about the plan as it's revised. I looked at Goal 2 and read through that, and I must say by the time I got through reading that section carefully, I was rather disappointed in the direction the plan was going. And an example would be Objective 3 on climate change, which is in the packet, page 86. I was really disappointed because it leaves planning policy to the state instead of using local knowledge and planning to address climate change impacts in ways specific to our county. And it, as written in Goal 2 there, it almost appeared to be a tactic to delay taking effective action in a timely way to address climate change, which we're in the grip of right now. But before I go too far with that, I was greatly relieved as I read through the rest of the goals. And I'm saying this so that even though there's no public here to hear it, maybe word will get out that you need to read the entire document to understand all the policies in there. Sprinkled through so many of the goals, I'm not sure it's all the goals, but it could be all the goals. There are policies related to climate change, and I changed my attitude about the document when I got through reading some of those, because I think there was a much more consideration of the importance of recognizing some of the problems that climate change will pose for the residents of our county and its development. So I know I'm going on and on here a bit, but nobody else wanted to chime in, so I'm not one to consider things ever perfect, so I'm commenting on some things that I view as just worthy of discussion and pointing out. But overall, I'm very pleased with the draft that we have in front of us here today. I did find it quite interesting in a way how land use is thought of in the county in two different ways. One is by these landscape units, which was a big part, I think, of the 1980 plan. And there are quite a few landscape units. I think there's over a dozen. And when I read through under Goal 2 again, the policies related to those different land types, I was really dissatisfied with what was written in there. It seemed not very forward-thinking. But then I read on further into that goal, where it takes up kind of the same idea, but using I think it's 6 land classifications of such things as development, rural, natural, agricultural, forest, and conservation. And what was written under those headings seemed much more logical and reasonable. And I was kind of surprised at the contrast that I got in reading those two different ways of looking at how to best develop land and use land in our county. So it's like a great novel or a great story. You don't want to just maybe think about 1 or 2 pages or 1 chapter. You need to read through the whole thing. You need to see that there's a lot of overlap in the policies from different goals, where it almost seems like the same policy is restated in a different goal, and I think that's good. But it shows also the connection between those goals, how they work together. So I've gone on and on here, and I'll just say, well, one other thing I'll pull out that's important to me is Goal 7, the hazards goal, natural hazards. And there was quite a bit of concern at a public meeting here about a year ago, and it was well stated by 1 or 2 individuals at their disappointment in the way the issue around the tsunami hazard was addressed. And it was enough of an issue in what we had before us at that time, and I've forgotten the date of the meeting, but it actually was sufficient for me to not want to approve of that draft of the plan. But in reading through this current draft, I've changed my view on that. I see sprinkled again through several of the goals here, places where there's, it gives me confidence that our county government and those involved with public safety have made it clear that they recognize the importance of considering the hazardous conditions that we have in our county and how to address land development in those zones. And so I feel like real progress was made there, and I don't know exactly what drove that. I've been through some public meetings and heard some discussions, but not all of it. But again, I'm satisfied that that's been addressed pretty well. And I think the comp plan is good because it's not so much detail that it's impractical to implement, but it's got the structure to give our county kind of a view of what's coming to us in the future and what our possibilities are for the county to develop into the future and make it a great place to live. So I'll just leave my comments at that, and if anybody has anything they'd like to say in response to my comments or something that has been stirred up in their own mind, up to other commissioners to chime in here.
I would agree with a lot of what you said. One thing I point out on that policy E in goal 1 is that it just says the county should review for options of redrawing the planning area boundaries. It doesn't make that change. It's just they should review that, and we could debate whether or not that's appropriate or not. And I'm not saying you're wrong on that either, on the drawing political boundaries. But a lot of hard work and effort's gone on by staff and members of the community, and I think this is a good example of not letting perfection getting in the way of the good. It's not a perfect plan, but it's an improvement, and I think that you won't ever get everybody to agree on what the plan is going to look like across the county. It's just it's an impossibility, and I think that it's just it's progress, and it's an improvement, something that had to be done, and I'm happy to forward this on to the board for their final review and move it forward. It's just been a long time coming.
Anyone else want to make a statement? Well, in that case, I would be looking for a motion regarding ordinance 2306 and whether we should.
I'll make the motion. I recommend that the Board of Commissioners adopt ordinance 23-06 as presented by staff.
I'll second the motion. This is Commissioner Pritchard.
Okay, I just wanted to make it more formal here. It's been moved by Planning Commissioner Johnson to recommend to the Board of Commissioners to adopt ordinance 23-06, the comprehensive plan update as presented in our packet. And I believe Commissioner Pritchard would like to second that. Would you please state?
I will second the motion. This is Commissioner Pritchard.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to recommend to the County Board of Commissioners to adopt ordinance 2306, comp plan update. And I guess that's really to hold a public hearing to consider that. So I'll ask for a roll call vote on who's in favor of that motion.
Vice Chair Powers,
Yes.
Commissioner Pritchard,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Linder,
Yes.
Commissioner Croshour,
Yes.
Chair Farrar.
Aye. So it's motion's carried 6-0, and it's a pleasure to see that moving forward, making progress, and going on to the next steps. With that, we'll take up agenda item 4, which is another legislative type hearing on ordinance 23-07, amendments to the law doc, regarding parking standards. And, I'll just, say we're gonna follow the format that we did on the other, two ordinances and, ask if any commissioner has a conflict of interest to report. And I see none and hear none, so, and I have none. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of this commission to hear, this matter at this time? And again, not seeing any and not hearing any, I will ask the staff, to make their report for us, please.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. Jason Pollock, planner, here with the county, just to review the law doc amendments to revise and update the parking standards. I think we last talked about this over 2 months ago, so just a quick summary. Our goal is to reduce the burden of parking for projects in the county. We're reducing the parking burden or requirements that proposed, for example, conditional use application would require. We've used the ITE manual, which is the Institute for Transportation Engineers Parking Generation Manual. It's a kind of a industry standard to understand the amount of parking demand a particular use would require. And then we've also updated some of our definitions, and then really we've updated some of the uses, for example, drive-through coffee kiosks, updated some language related to lodging and medical uses and things like that. So just if you have any questions, I'm happy to go over some of the changes that we last talked about, and then staff recommends that the Board of recommends that the Planning Commission recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption or approval of the amendments as presented.
And Jason, you also took this to the board as well, or we took it to the board, didn't we?
Yeah, blanking on that date, but we didn't have any things presented to us that were big amendments to the parking standards that you previously took a look at.
Okay, well, thank you for that report. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners regarding that report? It's all pretty fresh in our minds, I believe. So I'll, at this point, open the hearing to public testimony. The hearing is open for anyone to raise an issue on this matter, and you must raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford a decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue. If not, it precludes an appeal to the board or to LUBA on that issue. All speakers are requested to sign in and to state their name and address, and to limit their comments to a reasonable length of time of 3 minutes. And I'll ask first if there are any public agency representatives here who wish to make comment. And I see none and hear none. Are there any individuals from the public who have signed in or wish to make comment? And I see none and hear none, so there's no need for any response. And with that, I will close the public testimony, and that's at 10:51. According to our clock, and I will ask if any of the planning commissioners have any questions or discussion they'd like to carry on between us here. It's pretty straightforward, and we did visit this just a short few weeks or month or two ago, so maybe there's not much necessary. I'm looking at the screen. Are any of the virtual commissioners wanting to make comment? Guess not. Pretty open and shut matter, I think. I think it's good that we went through this, or that the community development staff went through this and cleaned up our parking regulations and brought them up to date. So that's a real good positive thing to have accomplished, and I would open it up for anyone to make a motion on what they'd like to do in this ordinance 2307 matter.
Okay, I recommend that the Board of Commissioners adopt ordinance 2307 as presented by staff.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Powers to recommend to the Board of Commissioners to adopt ordinance 2307 as presented by staff and in our packet. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Been seconded first by Commissioner Linder, so we'll go with his second on that. So it's been moved and seconded to recommend to the Board of Commissioners to adopt ordinance 2307 as presented by staff. If we could take a roll call vote on that, please.
Vice Chair Powers,
Yes.
Commissioner Pritchard,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Linder,
Aye.
Commissioner Kraschauer,
Yes.
Chair Farrar.
Aye. So again, 6-0 vote in favor of recommending to the Board of Commissioners that they adopt ordinance 2307 as presented by staff. So another item checked off the long list of things that the Community Development Department has been working on. Thank you for that.
One question for staff on that, if we're closed on it. What would the process be for someone to ask for an exception? If something comes up and they feel that parking requirements may be excessive for what they're actually trying to do, what would the process be for an applicant to ask for an exception to this requirement? Does it come to the Planning Commission, or is it a staff decision, or?
No, it would not be a staff decision. So they would have to apply for a variance to waive or eliminate completely the parking requirements. And then that would go to a hearings officer, as is written in our code, and then the hearings officer would make a decision. And so there are certain criteria a variance applicant has to meet in terms of what is the physical hardship associated with the land or the buildings that would require a reduction or a waiver of the standards. You have to show that your hardship is not self-imposed. So if I have a 10,000 square foot piece of land and I want to put up a 9,999 square foot building and then come to you or to the hearings officer and say, well, I just don't have enough room for, parking because my building's so big, then that would be a self-imposed hardship. And there are some other criteria in there you have to meet. It's a very high bar because generally local jurisdictions don't want to give out waivers to the rules like candy. If there is that much of a problem, like we found in our parking regulations, then you need to change the regulations, not just hand out the variances left and right, so. But we're hoping that with these amendments, we've made the standards more realistic, especially for a lot of our restaurant uses, which were just astronomical. So.
Yep.
Next on the agenda is item 5, the project status report. If we may have a review of that.
Yeah, it's really just, I don't think we had any updates. We did add one project, which was the Warrenton UGB amendment, which you heard today, so we've added that to the tracker. I can tell you that coming up in June, July, and August, there will be a lot more work sessions. We're going to have some public hearings to talk about some amendments to our exclusive farm use zones, how we handle non-conforming uses, and trying to find ways that, especially in the exclusive farm use zone where we're so restricted by state statute, to find ways where we do have the ability to maybe streamline some procedures. So you'll see some of those coming back to you in June, July, and August for discussion and public hearings.
Okay, question, is there even a remote idea of when we might see Goal 5 come to us, and also on the 6 community plans? Is there any rough dates on when those might come?
We do not have a rough schedule right now at this time, Chair, so we would want to have that discussion with the board and with our county manager and work out the timing on those. I can tell you that with goals 16, 17, and 18, we have worked with the board who's given staff the go-ahead to put those requests for proposals out to get those goals updated. So you will see those RFPs going out probably in the next month or so. But in terms of Goal 5 and the community plans, we haven't established the final schedule.
Okay, and on those 3 goals that are going out for RFPs, is it expected that process will be sort of a year long before they're finished, or?
Yeah, we anticipate 12 to 18 months.
Okay. So that's only one thing that comes to mind on the comp plan update. It's unfortunate the whole thing couldn't have been all done at once, but I can see the logic of splitting off those things that were going to take an inordinate amount of time compared to what it's already prepared and ready to go. So.
Yeah, I can tell you that Wasco County went through this process several years ago, about the same time we kicked ours off. They also ended up pulling their Goal 5, and, they don't have quite the resources that we do of the inventory list in Goal 5. So it's a very, very complex goal, and there's so much to deal with that I think you could just make one year-long project out of just looking at that one goal. So it's not unusual.
All right. And do you have anything, I don't know if that was kind of a combination of status report and director's report, or do you have?
No, I have a few additional items,
Okay.
And I apologize, I didn't have time to put together the full written director's report because we were putting the public hearings together. Just a reminder that we have a May 19th deadline for applications if you want to be reappointed to your planning commission position, or at least apply for that. And Jason, I think you will have an email from Teresa. There was some issue with the application that you submitted, so we will need to look into that. We do have 2 other applicants who have submitted. We're anticipating that interviews with the board would likely occur on June 7th, and then a board work session the following week, and then final appointments on June 28th. And the 2 terms do expire on June 30th. So just a reminder. We talked about comprehensive plan today. We talked about goals 18. And then the only other item is we've had some previous discussion about FEMA's biological opinion and the environmental protection review that they're going through right now. And so I just wanted to let everyone know that the county formally submitted comments and concerns to the docket for that case on April 27th. And I'll send you an email with those comments separately. I didn't have time to print them out this morning, but just to let you know that the county has submitted comments. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom from any of the commissioners?
No words of wisdom.
Well, I'd just like to take a brief moment to recognize the community development staff and under the leadership of their director, Director Henriksen, on the very amazing job you did in working through this revision of the comprehensive plan. I hope that at a higher level somewhere, that gets recognized in this county as having been a real significant accomplishment and a savings to the residents of our county in dollars and cents to do so much of the work in-house, although it took hundreds of hours of volunteer time added to that, and it shows something about the people in this county and their willingness to step forward and put in time on some pretty grueling meetings and long reading assignments. So I think all who were involved in this process really deserve some kind of recognition, but especially the Community Development Department, staff, and the director. And to the director, I would say you couldn't have done more to try to bring it to the public's attention of what was going on in revising the comp plan and the importance it is for a county to have an updated comp plan. And you really reached out every way imaginable to get people to come to meetings and put their thoughts out there to be considered in the development of the comp plan. So I just think you deserve real special recognition, all of you that worked on it.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, I will adjourn today's meeting at 4 minutes after 11, which is some kind of a record, I think.